It
All right,
says
so we're
it's
recording here.
showtime. You are
I'm rolling.
live.
Bop, beep, boop, bop, boop, boop. I'll make one of those fancy video countdowns or something.
Yeah.
You know what would be great, John? I don't think any of these streamers have this yet, is that ability for us to be in a green room while you're showing something else. You know? Like right now when you show something, we can't see each other and talk anymore.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if we were at a TV show or something, obviously we'd still be able to communicate, see each other. So
Right.
it's kind of a bummer.
That sounds like a request for a StreamYard. They're pretty responsive.
Yeah, that's true. They are
Where's
tweaking
my
it all
green
the
room
time.
access,
Nick's
dude?
here.
We pay them.
Hey, Nick.
Hi,
My
Nick.
greenbacks. Nick says, howdy, homies.
He does say howdy.
That must be a Texas greeting. Karen's here.
Hey,
Guys.
Karen to the
on
F.
YouTube.
Welcome.
Wow.
Right.
Seeing these names is
here.
reminding me I better get my little card ready.
Right?
You can say it the same way every time.
I know.
You have a little time. You can prepare.
Yeah,
Quite
well,
at
I'm
the
making
end,
stats about radio stations and stuff. What I'm really dying to know is, because I didn't say anything to her, did Miss So get our message in the out of the episode?
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Okay.
She did?
Yes.
Oh,
I
you know that
spoke
already?
with her Tuesday during my Twitch
okay.
live editing and said, hey, did you hear the shout out? She's like, I did.
Oh.
It made me laugh.
Yay. Well,
So, yes.
Miss
It's the
Sil, if
last
you're
time she
listening
said she
right
didn't know.
now, put in a comment. Because I see a YouTube comment from Karen Flick.
There she is.
There she is.
Hey, Miss
Boom.
Yay.
As if on
Hey.
request.
Just talked about
Technically, it was on request.
I love when you see the view numbers go up and then they go down by one. Like we said this before. Like, people are literally like, "Nope,
Right.
this is not what I wanted."
Didn't mean to click on this.
I'm eating dinner. I can't watch these guys.
What? I thought this was going to be entertainment. I can't. What am I doing here?
What about 1980 snow?
Snow.
All right, let's just start. I'll play the theme here. Hey,
Yeah.
John get his dinner. Hopefully, John will get his dinner with a reasonable hour.
Or did John have dinner early?
Nope.
Nope.
No, that's how I
1980s,
feel
no.
too. 1980s. No.
Dawn's here too.
That's how I feel during the show. You know, like whenever I was performing on stage, whenever I was DJing or doing this, there's something. And John, I don't know if you have this experience doing your panels or you're playing in a band, Kat, whether when you were dancing on a performance. I wouldn't get hungry the hours leading up to it. It would just, all that stuff just sort of turns on. Like, prioritize your things. Then when it's
100%.
done, you're starving.
Famished. Absolutely. Yep.
You go like 6 hours without eating anything.
Yep.
I think it's adrenaline. It's even if you're not nervous, there's the adrenaline, the performance adrenaline. I think if you care about what you're doing, if you're just there to go, I'm in the band, I'm screwing around, maybe not. But if you like it and you want to do well, I think there's that somewhat performance anxiety. The adrenaline kicks in, and you can't think about hunger. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Definitely a focus. You're focused on. Yeah.
Yep.
Stave it off.
Hey, Dawn. Did I not say hi
Yes.
to Dawn? I don't know if I think I did.
Hi,
Stuff happened all on
Dawn.
top of each other. Miss So's going to make dinner, speaking of dinner, but she'll be lurking, she says.
Oh,
Eric,
she
go
called
away.
us 3 of her favorite humans on the planet. Or in the planet. In or on.
This is how I'll be able to see the comments. Putting my glasses.
Yeah, you have to fix your glasses.
I got to get another screen with just the comments. It's like gigantic. It'll be so big you'll just see a glow on me.
That's what I do when I live stream. I have the chat blown up really big on my laptop, so I
Yeah.
see it.
You gotta have to, I think the
They
last
go by so fast.
we did this a month ago. I was fine. Now, for some reason,
I don't feel so bad. I mean, it's a little fuzzy, but I
on that
can
next
read
time.
it.
all right. Hey, welcome back to another episode of 1980s Now, a weekly examination of the importance of 1980s pop culture and its influence today. My name's Will, and joining me as always on this live stream of our latest podcast episode, live recording of our latest podcast episode, my friends and co-hosts Kat and John. Hello, friends.
Hello, friends.
Hey there, 1980s. How you doing?
Wow, so many uses. It's gonna become like
gonna
the
use
F
it
word,
over and
right?
over.
You could just.
You're right. It could be
Context.
a verb, an adjective, an adverb with ly.
I guess we don't want it to be a swear word, though. That would be bad.
No.
Hey, don't forget to
It's
listen to
for
John
emphasis.
on his other podcast, because in addition to his co-hosting duties here, he hosts his very own grown-up, adult, mature podcast. No, it's more like a podcast where 3 guys fighting to avoid any responsibility
Exactly.
associated with adulthood. Gen X grown up.
Thank you.
Hey, on today's show, we're going to be talking about 1980s radio, or radio in the 1980s. Look, I've got some information to share with you, but primarily I wanted to get your take on this because, like so many of the things we talk about, I know what my experience is. And not only is that unique to me, and I know that already, but if at all it's common, it may be limited to my region, especially with radio in the 80s, because unlike radio today, or the methods we have for receiving music and talk and news, it was fairly localized. And this reminds me, if you haven't heard, and this episode was inspired by our conversation we just had with Larry the Duck Dunn. And this is a perfect example because, Larry was the music director for most of the 80s. He was also an on-air talent at WLIR in New York. And talk about regional. This was a Long Island. Why are you laughing at that?
I'm laughing because the way you phrased it, you said he was the music director for most of the 80s. He just ran the decade. But then the rest of the sentence came and it got less funny, but it was funny to me at first.
Your brain's working
Did you hear
faster.
that, Kat? That's what she heard.
It didn't click, but now that you say
He's a
it.
busy guy.
That's a big job.
Yes, for the
Right.
1980s. Oh my gosh,
Director
that'd be
for
quite
the 80s?
Intimidating. He did a good job, I'll say. So.
mad respect. Yes.
Absolutely.
But talking about, the sort of regional thing about music was, so this Long Island station that had a real impact ultimately on the nation, but at the time, only within, whatever radius this signal reached, you were able to hear these bands that other folks in our country hadn't heard yet. Duran Duran, U2, Howard Jones, etc., and so on. So I'll be curious to find out about your experiences as well.
All right.
Meanwhile, we're going to be talking about, before that, we're going to review current news stories related to 1980s media, including Beetlejuice 2. Finally seems like it's coming. You know what? I forgot to write it down. So I'm going to have to go through my papers here. Let's see what else.
Shuffle.
How the let's see, the writers, the Writers Guild is on strike right now, but this reminds us of a similar experience in the 1980s. Maybe it's a cautionary tale.
A notorious one.
Sad news regarding MTV News, which inspires this segment every week. And Dolly Parton's got a new album arriving this fall, but it's not country. All right. There you go. Hey, before we talk about any of that, a quick announcement. Is that the announcement sound? No, it's the one that says announce because John told me to change it. A quick announcement.
He did? Da-ding.
Yeah, that's the one that sends John into a tizzy. Hey, an announcement for you, Kat and John, too. We're off next week. We're going to be off next week. Next week is just too crazy.
Oh.
And I know instead of full-assing an episode or zero-assing, whichever is the bad one.
Just meet us in the middle. Can we just halfway do it?
We do that every week, John.
Oh,
now I'm suggesting it's going to be worse.
That's the
Full ass.
How would anyone know the difference?
Let me think. How can we make the show worse? Well, right now it's pretty bad. Compare it to this, I guess. Well, we can improve it by not having a new episode that day. I guess is what I'm suggesting.
Self-promotion. Shameless.
Next week is too crazy.
Don't oversell it. Careful.
Yeah. I just realized how we release these episodes. I'm trying to think of the timing. I'll cut all this out. But it's...
Oh, will you?
I got the convention. Yeah, it's not for the live people. I can't cut it out live.
That's right.
I guess I could. I could just shut up.
You people, do you have a flashy thingy from MIB?
Stop talking.
Nobody remember what we just said.
I'm just thinking, we always record these a few days in advance, and then what's my tenses I'm using? See, because next week's not a new episode, because this will come out Monday.
When you're listening.
Oh, okay. Anyway, because this weekend, this upcoming weekend, I know I'll be busy attending the Motor City convention, the Motor City Comic Con in Novi, Detroit, all weekend long. So yeah, I'll be with my buddy Yuri again this upcoming weekend. Hey, if you're going to be there, come and say hi. Motor City Con in Michigan. It's really no Michigan, but I think it's the Detroit area.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll edit in the right word at some point before this airs. All right, so there you guys got a week off, which means the week after that, our episode's going to be even better than this one. So then you're going to get the full ass or no ass, whichever is the best of the asses to have.
It's personal preference. Choose your own.
Right. Roll your own ass level.
Yes. Huh.
Choose your ass.
Choose
Level.
your own ass. All right, hey, let's whatever. I'm not going to even try to risk a segue on that one. Let's just caught up on 1980.
Good call.
News.
That's experience talking right there. You know better than to try to segue out of that. Well done.
See, yeah, I know how to bail out sometimes. Oh, look at that. See, we'll be off, and Nick says he'll be listening to Gen X Grown Up.
GXGU.
There you go. There you go.
Not just GXG.
I imagine he listens to both whenever whenever new ones are available. But
No, I don't expect
We'll
so.
have
I
that.
expect there's finally an excuse to listen to the other one, which I appreciate. Give us a shot.
Okay.
Thank you. I've always said we're better than nothing.
Now there's some self-promotion.
now, can you please explain that using the ass system
Oh, the ass system. Oh,
or any anatomical part? Now, I know ass probably refers.
I was
to
gonna
donkey.
try, and then you cut me off.
It must refer to donkey, right? If you're half-assing, you don't have enough ass to pull your cart or something like that. Maybe.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah, where does that even
unless
come
it's it's an inside donkey, in which case the smaller would be preferable because it would be knocking things over. So then you'd like a half ass because it'd be like a little dog.
Now, what if the donkey is born with just one buttock? Would it be a quarter ass? You'd be quarter assing it if you only had one donkey that was on the inside, or whatever John said. All right, hey, as reported by nobody cares about this. As reported by a Deadline, Beetlejuice 2 will open on September 6th, 2024. Wow, that's awfully specific.
Yes.
So, yeah. But John, you got words already?
This is already a life-changing piece of news when I saw this pop in the other day because
Life-changing.
serendipitously my daughter
Yes.
is planning to get a giant sandworm tattoo on her
Uh-huh.
lower calf.
Oh my gosh.
So I told her-
September 6th?
2024.
No. But like in the next month or so, she was kind of planning it, and now I'm like, maybe you wait and see if the second movie wrecks it and you don't want a sandworm on your leg.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Already have a backup plan of what you could turn it into.
Right. Right. Make it it's the medical caduceus all of a sudden. I turn
Right,
I
yeah.
love doctors is what it is. It never
Yes.
was.
Just to go to medical school just to make up for the tattoo. 7 years later.
To bail out.
Well, Beetlejuice. Just a few days ago, Warner Brothers announced that The Ghost with the Most will return to the screen in an all-new adventure next fall. I did say it 3 times?
You did. I was looking around. I was making
I
sure.
meant to stop short. And hey, the great
Startled me.
news is, I think the better news is, right? Because we've heard talk of Beetlejuice 2 ever since Beetlejuice 1 concluded in the 1980s. With a thank goodness they never made it. Beetlejuice goes to Hawaii, and I'm not making that up. That's true. Look it up.
Wow.
Tim Burton is reteaming with Michael Keaton to make this
Wow.
sequel to the cult classic from 1988. This was a hot time for Michael Keaton because he was already building his star power slowly over the decade, but then with this 1-2 punch of Beetlejuice with Tim Burton, and then shortly after starring as Batman / Bruce Wayne in Burton's 1989 Batman. That's it. He was done. He was on the map. So his star power was solidified. And I think I was a big fan of his prior to that, with his comedies, Mr. Mom and what's that the one with
Oh yeah.
Henry Winkler,
There's,
Night Shift.
Night Shift, right? Note to
Gung
self,
Ho.
edible paper.
Note to self, edible paper. Is that a Night Shift quote?
That's from Night Shift. Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Because he was going around with the little handheld recorder, and every time he came up with something, he would go, note to self. And
I don't
because he was
remember
making
that.
inventions all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think Winkler was like trying to throw paper away and he couldn't find the trash can. He's like, note to self, edible paper.
Oh, Brad says the only thing good about Beetlejuice was Winona Ryder. Yep, I said it.
Really?
Oh, Brad, fisticuffs.
Yeah.
Fisticuffs.
I rewatched it. I rewatched it
Brad.
very recently, and
Nick says, "Ouch."
it's a good film. It's a solid film. I mean, yeah,
It's just
It's
fun.
Oh,
on my rewatch
yeah. I
list.
mean, yeah.
That's
been a
all.
long time
Yeah.
since
I think it's the
last
kind of film though that someone could oversell to you. If you've never seen it, Kat, and if someone really talked
I've
it up.
seen it.
Wait a minute. Why is it cat? We've never seen it. Cat.
I just was rolling. I was playing statistics.
Just pick one.
I've seen it, and my friend in high school and I had a joke. We kept saying Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice 3 times to each other. It was a long time ago, though. It is on my rewatch list.
Yeah.
So I can refresh myself on the details.
Oh, Karen reminds us that it features the music of the late, great Harry Belafonte. That's true.
I remember that.
Jump in the line.
That's what I think of.
Yeah, and I would say I want to say those are kinds of songs we might have heard from older generations having played already. And so I was semi-familiar with Harry Belafonte, but that, for me, I've learned more songs, and I think our generation learned some people just learned those songs, period. A very good friend of mine, it's funny because you would never suspect it's because this is a guy into rock and hip hop. Suddenly, all he wanted to listen to was Harry, like the greatest hits, Harry Belafonte, over and over again. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, talking about having radios. But anyway, so also of interesting note is that joining the cast is Wednesday's Jenna Ortega, who also just worked with Tim Burton on that TV series, which was a great show, by the way, if you haven't seen it. Fantastic.
Want to see it? Haven't seen it.
And the script is written by Alfred Go, I think you say his name. I never said his name out loud. And Miles Miller, which I know how to say that one, even though it's spelled differently. With earlier drafts from Seth Grahame-Smith, who was the writer of that Abraham Lincoln Hunts Vampires movie, and he wrote Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and he's written a ton of stuff. I'm sorry, Seth, for not remembering. Anyway. So you guys know what the movie is about. In addition to the film, it also spawned a television series, an animated television series that was also produced by Burton that ran from September of 89 through October of 1991. I think I caught it briefly because I was just curious, and I was like, this isn't our Beetlejuice. This is something a little different, and that was the end of that.
Yeah,
The best contribution the cartoon made was all the action figures. That was cool. Just like the real Ghostbusters had all the goofy action figures with the pop-out eyes and everything.
With the eyes and the,
the Beetlejuice cartoon had a ton of action figures too.
Yeah.
Oh, Michael says probably no Alec Baldwin this time.
Right.
Yeah, he's probably laying low, I would think. But
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, well, I mean, they were dead, so he and Gina Davis should not be aging.
True.
And so now they're 40 years older or so now. So that would be hard to explain. I mean,
that's a couple of reasons there.
You couldn't say they're dead because they already were, but I mean, they should not have aged. So you have Brent Spiner data syndrome, right, with these people that should not have aged.
What syndrome?
Yeah. That's a
Star Trek
spin-off podcast.
Oh.
Yeah, they'd have to go all Harold Ramis and, what they did in the Ghostbusters.
Yes.
Good point, John.
Miss So says, note to self, fight Brad.
Yes, there we go.
Oh.
It's 2-on-1 now, Brad. You got me and Miss So. You got to take on.
And why is Brad calling me a
talking.
player? I don't understand.
He's playing the odds, just like Will.
And speaking of the actors in the film, Jenna Ortega. Look, I love Jenna Ortega. My first saw her performing in this show that I watched with my younger daughter, Stuck in the Middle. Fantastic. She was the star of that show. It was like I don't know if it was a Disney show, but it was one of those kids channels.
Sorry.
What are you doing?
I was talking to Brad.
How are you talking to Brad by mouthing words on a podcast?
Well,
Are
he's
you
watching
like
us.
doing ASL for him? What are you?
He answered my question.
Oh, for crying out loud! Kat, type in the chat if you want to talk.
All right.
Sorry.
Everyone, we're having a meeting here. No side conversations. Turn off your phones.
John, we don't need kids. She
happened to
had to
Kat?
do their own show in the stream or something. Anyway, so what was I saying?
I demand. I want my cat back there. Thank you.
Oh, like at the bottom now.
She got demoted.
You got demoted. Never mind. I'm back in my place. Don't worry.
Yes, there you go. But look, I love Jenna Ortega. I think she's fantastic. She was great in Wednesday. Excuse me. But isn't this Wednesday character a little too on the nose to now? I mean, Wednesday is very much in that vein of the Lydia Dietz character that Winona Ryder played. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We don't know who she's going to play. Some rumors are that
does
she's going to be Lydia's
feel-
daughter, but we don't know that for sure.
It does feel like the same character again, but also we don't know. It could be that Lydia's daughter fell far from the tree and does not have that kind of goth leaning and sort of thing. It could just be that she's a great actress and she's got the darkness in her, but it'd be more fun to have Lydia's daughter upbeat and bright
Sunshine and
and
rainbows,
pigtails and just and happy and cheerful and not this, this character.
John,
we don't know.
we're going to do that. That's
my plan. That's
You're
what
right.
Well, that's how you get interest is you play against expectation and type. That's why it's cool, right? You go to see the guy that loved doing something, and you start the movie, he hates it. He has to get his way back. So there we go. Put me in the writer's room. I'll take care of
Yeah,
it.
put them in the writers' room already.
We're always saying that. Yeah.
But you're right. Jenna and Tim Burton teaming together, they would undoubtedly do the smart thing, which is what you're suggesting. Of course, the movie also spawned a 2019 Broadway musical, which was also produced by Warner Brothers.
That's right. That's right.
Of course, it closed briefly during the COVID times, but reopened in April 2022, and then it just recently closed again at the beginning of this year. It is on tour, though, and it's fantastic if you have a chance to see it. It's absolutely hilarious, and
It's spectacular.
it's in the spirit, no pun intended, of the films. Of the film, right?
Yeah.
Huh. I didn't write a title for this.
It was awesome. I think it's only, it was just off. It was on Broadway when I saw it. I saw it there some years back. And I've probably seen about half a dozen shows on Broadway. And the only ones that were worth the money and time I invested to see them on Broadway were this one and Book of Mormon. Two spectacular shows.
That's really good.
Others were kind of
seen
like,
it, I've heard of that.
oh my God, are we still, what's the Jerky Boys or whatever, the Dancing Pants or whatever the things are on Broadway now.
What? I don't know.
Jerky
Jerky
Boys
Boys, the
on
musical? I'm
Broadway?
curious about that.
The fancy pants.
It's something boys, something about pants. I don't know. Anyway,
you're
see, that's how much I remember. them. I
Jersey
don't care.
Boys.
That's it. That's it. It was that one. Yes.
Jersey Boys. Oh my goodness.
Somehow he mushed jerky or jersey and pants and wow.
Oh, Tree Riot
Jerky
says,
pants.
sorry, Miss So, I love the gothicness of Beetlejuice. Maybe I was too distracted. No, it's perfect. Yeah, it's good. Beetlejuice is a good movie.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, in other 1980s news, I didn't write a title for this one. Let's make it up. The Writers Guild of America, the current Writers Guild of America strike reminds us of one that happened in the 1980s with dire consequences.
No
Ooh,
kidding.
Okay, that spiced it up a little.
Do I have
there,
your
Will.
attention there? All right, there you go. So I'm sure, undoubtedly, you've heard, if you're a fan of pop culture like we are, undoubtedly you've learned that just on May 2nd, after 6 weeks of negotiation with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, the Writers Guild, the WGA, which represents about 11,500 people who write the Hollywood shows, movies that we love going to see in the theaters and watching at home. Well, they began a strike. They've got picketing going in New York City, Los Angeles, and Atlanta, with these strikes, the ensuing strikes shutting down productions, because turns out you need writers to do shows.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, then don't put me in the writer's room until we get this cleared up. Then,
get out. Get in the writers' room. Now get out. Put him in the writers' room, then hand him a sign.
And then here, yeah.
As a result of the strike, no member of the WGA, wow, it's kind of tricky. WGA will write new scripts for TV shows and movies until the membership votes to end the strike, just like, unions, unions. For most writers, this also means foregoing income that they normally get writing during the strike.
do it.
The folks they're negotiating with, by the way, this AMPTP is negotiating on behalf of everyone that makes content: Netflix, Amazon, Apple, Disney, Discovery, Warner, NBC, Universal, Paramount, and Sony. The issue at this point is the streaming. In short, the effect that streaming has had on writer compensation and residuals. Just like you look, this is a common story. Stuff like this: the government, unions, etc., they fail to keep pace. Companies paying with regard to salaries for employees, they fail to keep pace with the times, and in this case, it's technology. So streaming creates these different challenges or opportunities, and everyone's getting compensated except the writers. Seems like so. That's it in a nutshell. Anyway, taking this back, that's the now portion, Kat. Taking it back to the 1980s, we're reminded of the longest WGA strike, which lasted for 153 days. That was the one that happened in 1988. It's similar at the time. There was the issue was with regard to residuals then, which is part of the issue today. Then it was that I think the production companies were seeing that there was a viewership was down with regard to, I guess, reruns and shows that would generate residuals. And so they decided that they wanted to, cut or reduce the amount that the writers were getting cut in on. And the writers were like, what? Why punish me? I still wrote it, and you're still making some money. I just want the percentage.
Yes.
You make less, I make less. It's a percentage. Anyway, so as a result of this real world, sorry. And you know what? I forgot to make this point. Maybe I'll add this in. because this is, I want to add this in because this ties a couple things together. So as a result of the current strike, a number of Star Trek writers have taken to social media to show their support for their writing family, like Strange New Worlds co-showrunner Henry Alonso Myers. Now, the strike will have no impact on the upcoming second season because it's already in the can. It's set to air soon, I believe, June 15th.
June 15th. Yep.
But the strike could affect the recently announced third season, which is supposed to film this summer. Unless they've already written everything and none of the people that are working on the show decide, hey, I'm still going to support my fellow artists and not work either, because we've had some examples of that too. Folks who do non-writing jobs saying, you know what, I'm not going to show up either because, which is, that's how you get these companies to change their minds, is solidarity.
Yeah.
Anyway, this reminds us of the 1988 strike, and I've already said all that. So here's a real-world example from the 1980s, how these strikes impact the media we love, and I'm going to need John's full support on this because he's our resident expert. Speaking of Star Trek.
Oh, Star Trek is coming.
Yeah, well, I just mentioned Star Trek. And in 1988, just as the second season of Star Trek, The Next Generation was to begin production, just like today, the WGA went on strike. Yep. Now, while ultimately TNG is a fan favorite, one of my favorite, certainly, incarnations of the Star Trek world, the strike gave us what is widely accepted as the worst season of that show. A couple things happened. One included to keep things going, the producers had to get creative, and not creative in the good sense, like where you come up with great ideas. Creative in the sense that they think of cost-cutting measures and ways to work without writers. I mean, first, the season. Well, the first season and every season since had 26 episodes. This one wound up having only 22.
Yep.
And they used other tactics, like the first episode of the season, The Child. I had never heard this, John. Was initially written for the unmade 1970 Star Trek spinoff that was to be called Star Trek Phase 2.
Phase 2. That's right. Yeah. They used a lot of leftover scripts for a lot of the first season or two of The Next Generation because Phase 2 was a thing. And so there are about 6 or 7 episodes in that first 2 seasons from that. Even when the original series got canceled, there were a few treatments and possibly not quite complete scripts that would have been like Kirk and Company shows that they leveraged during this strike to say, oh, well, it's basically written. We just got to map characters on different people because you kind of have like, you need the cold logical. Goes to make it Data. Right. Well, you need the swashbuckling guy. We'll make it Riker. Like you can map a lot of that stuff and get them doing similar things. But when you know what they are and you go, oh, I see how that probably was initially going to be Spock or initially going to be Sulu or something when you see them mapped on. Yep.
Okay.
Right.
Cool.
And unfortunately, a couple of other things happened as a result of this truncated season was, even though the strike had ended by July of 89, the effects were still being felt. One of the changes that came out of the strike was something with regard to the accounting, which affected their budget. And so they had a couple of episodes that essentially ate up a lot of the money for their shows, including, period costumes and sets for Elementary Dear Data, Who, which features elaborate Borg makeup and Borg ship sets. Those 2 episodes, the rumor goes, drained the coffers and left us with the final episode of the season, which just ended on a whimper, Shades of Grey.
Oh, my.
Which, for the first time in history, Star Trek did something that other shows do to save money routinely. And in the 80s, it was like every season you could count on this. And even in the 90s, I remember, is doing a clips show. Now, in a comedy show, like sitcoms, they've done this oftentimes. It's easy. Remember that time when and then we get to see the jokes again. And if the jokes, you watch reruns of comedy shows because the laughs still hold up.
Yeah.
They shot a clip show for Star Trek.
I remember it being bad at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. So this would have been early '89 by the time first quarter '89 when Shades of Grey finally aired, and this is when I gotta think what was going on. I was still living in Central Florida, I guess. Hadn't yet gone off to college, but I would watch it with friends and we would get together and we couldn't wait to watch the next episode. We'd do it because we were all nerds and wanted to see that. And we watched that one and we're all just kind of, you get about 15 minutes into it because it starts as a regular episode, but then And then I won't bore you with it's not worth me dignifying the show with an explanation of the synopsis. The point is something happens where let's trigger a bunch of Riker's memories to help him make his way back from this problem he has, this disease that he's fallen to. And the notable thing was, like you said, Will, it was like, remember that time we did such and such, and you go to the clip? Yeah. They didn't even set up the clips. Right. They just had these bits where they would go, let's try this memory. And it wasn't until I read this article that this made sense. The actors didn't even know what clip they were going to put in. Yeah. They just said, let's just film the heads and tails. Let's try this memory. Okay, cut. Ready to do another one? That one didn't work. Let's try this memory. And they didn't know what the clips were going to be even. Yeah. And even at the time, I remember watching it and going, Star Trek is doing this? What's going on? I know I wasn't aware of the Writers Guild strike because I wasn't that privy to what was going on in media, but I could tell this was a bad episode of Star Trek. And because they didn't do that, and it was dumb, and it was pretty much all happened in the sick bay. It was
the season 2 head writer Maurice Hurley, who was later fired for other reasons, said Shades of Grey was a quote piece of shit, end quote. And he wrote it
succinctly. That's correct.
I read this clip, or there was an excerpt from an interview with him when he said we knew it was bad at the time.
Yeah.
But, my gosh. Tree Riot says the strike has impacted Stranger Things too. They stopped filming. Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I'm sure. It's impacted things we can't imagine because look at the lead time that streaming shows have these days, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are like 10-hour movies that they're putting together, and there's like Strange New Worlds we just said is about to come out in June. It was filmed over a year ago.
Wow.
So this is going to impact. This is going to have ripples for the next 18 months, probably, assuming it gets resolved at some point. It could be longer.
Well, a few of our listeners are planning on catching up on all the things that they're behind on.
There you go.
This time,
take advantage.
Yeah.
Watch the Muppets Mayhem.
Karen Flieger.
Oh, have you watched it?
I watched the first episode. It's spectacular.
Okay. I haven't yet. I saw a review of it today. I was avoiding.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I lost track of that.
It's a little saccharine because it's Disney owned, but once you get past that, it's Muppets. The Muppets themselves are still kind of wink and nod, kind of slyly doing stuff they shouldn't. I love it.
Oh, excellent.
Tree Riot. Sorry, Will.
Sorry, Will.
Well, Brad. Oh,
Same
Brad's
guy.
doing both. You want me to say Brad then instead? Okay, Brad. I'll insert this later, Brad. Brad says, there you go, right? When you hear it back, it'll sound perfect. I assure you. Hey, another 1980s news as reported by Ultimate Classic Rock. A new Dolly Parton album will arrive this fall. Got a lot of stuff, new stuff coming up here. Dolly Parton has announced that her upcoming rock album, Rockstar, will arrive on November 17th. So, look, let me take you back to 2022. If you remember when Dolly was nominated for the Rock Hall, she politely refused, saying, quote, I do hope that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame will understand and be willing to consider me again if I'm ever worthy. This has, however, inspired me to put out a hopefully great rock and roll album at some point in the future, which I have always wanted to do, end quote. And there you go. From that, I don't know what... gracious, trying to graciously bow out of an award that folks often lament is just for rock and roll, for crying out loud. Came this new album, and now we have a list, the track listing. We were teased a little bit with some of the artists she was going to work with, and now we have a full track listing and a full accounting for all the folks that are going to be. She's going to be singing with. Yeah,
it looks amazing. Oh, it looks amazing.
Yeah.
And so I don't care if you like Dolly Parton or not, what kind of evil person doesn't like Dolly Parton? She's an amazing philanthropist.
Yeah.
If you like rock or not, if you like country or not, this roster is like a who's who of amazing talent yesterday and today. It's just crazy.
Right. Yeah. And the only thing I could think about with regard to a Dolly Parton edition that is, something like that. I don't know.
Are you fighting underwater specters again?
Yes.
Oh.
But the
pool net.
But the folks she's collaborating with and the cover song she's doing, so much 80s goodness represented here.
Yes.
Including Sting, Steve Perry, Ann Wilson, Debbie Harry, Kevin Cronin, of REO Speedwagon. In addition to that, both surviving Beatles, Ringo, I think this is a terrible way to say it, right? Both surviving. What are you doing, Kat?
I'm
Are
waiting.
you doing another show? What are you doing?
Waiting. No, I'm waiting to hear.
Wait. Okay. Waiting to hear who it is?
Oh, no, there's more coming, surely, on this list that you're listing.
I had something to say about the Beatles, and you didn't even get to it because Cat ruined it.
I see waving out
I'm
of the corner of my
telling
eye. I
Mom.
figure you're trying to get my attention.
No, I
She's waving at the people appearing in chat.
was
I
waving
think
at
so,
Marcus.
maybe.
I was waving
Not
at
going to say it,
Marcus.
Marcus.
And if you
and end the story before that, you'll see. Watch.
No.
Watch how this goes.
Oh, we're ready.
Anyway, I think this is a terrible way to say this, right? Both surviving Beatles. I don't know. Something feels really icky about saying it that way.
Would you rather them say neither dead Beatle?
Well, how about just the Beatles, or how about just Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney?
when
I feel
read
like
that
there's a death watch going on. You know, the countdown.
when I first read it, it said uniting the Beatles, I think, and I was like, wait, what?
Get back together again.
Is there a Ouija board involved?
There's only one way to do that.
John Lennon. But anyway, both surviving Beatles, Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney, appear
Who's
on
Dolly
Paul's cover of
Parton?
"Let It Be," for example, with Mick Fleetwood and Peter Frampton. And here is some additional songs I think of interest to our particular fans here. She'll be performing Rockstar, the titular album. That's not just for Dolly. Every time you just get the same name in the thing. Okay. Titular album. Special guest, Ricky. This is Richie. Oh, Richie Sambora. Sorry, I thought it was going to be somebody
Richie
else.
Sambora.
Special guest, Richie Sambora of Bon Jovi, of course. Every breath you take, featuring P. Diddy. Open arm. Oh, wait.
Could you quit it?
He's going to owe Sting again. Every breath you take with Sting. Open Arms, Steve Perry. Magic Man with Ann Wilson. Long as I Can See the Light, John Fogerty. I Want You Back, Steven Tyler. Purple Rain. I guess by yourself there. I Hate Myself for Loving You, Joan Jett.
By yourself.
Keep on Loving You, Kevin Cronin. She's just basically doing covers with the original artist. This is crazy.
So,
Yeah.
point of order. Yeah, the article said cover.
Mm-hmm.
If the original artist is on the track,
Ooh,
is it technically a cover anymore?
Ooh, such a good question.
interesting.
Because if an original artist re-records it, it's just the song or a re-recorded version
re-recording.
of the song.
Yeah,
And there's a lot of that going around to get rights back. Like you don't have the rights to the original recording, so you re-record it. I've seen that. But is it even a cover anymore? I mean, Sting is on Every Breath You Take. Is that a cover of the song?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, take it a step back, because we have this happen sometimes, and sometimes we had it just when streaming started becoming a platform for music, right? Like Def Leppard comes to mind. I've used them as this example for this, and so there's not to be too technical, but right. So Def Leppard in the 1980s made an album. They recorded an album, even though they wrote the songs and wrote the music. For example, let's talk about original Def Leppard song. When it gets released, they may not own the actual song.
Right.
They own
That
the
iteration
publishing
of it.
but not the mechanical right. So when streaming came out and they weren't on the platform and they had no right to say to the record company, they couldn't force the record company to do it. They just re-recorded all their songs and try to make them sound like the original. So are those considered covers or not? I guess that's, if we can figure that out, we'll know your answer. I think
That's it. Yeah. I don't think they're covers, but I see Brad in the chat going, it's not the original. Agreed. 100% agreed. That the question is, though, is it a cover? I would say it's not. I guess you could let's go to Webster and see what it says. To me, a cover is someone else doing a song that is traditionally known or best known by an entirely different artist. But if you have the best known artist on the song, it's an awesome duet.
Yeah.
Trio or quadrangle or whatever you have when you get more people, but it's not a cover, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Quartet.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. I mean,
Quadrangle is wrong.
just like they came up with reboot, where you need something else. Maybe that's maybe it's
exactly.
reboot. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, also Heart of Glass, Debbie Harry, Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me, Elton John, We Are the Champions, Bygones with Rob Halford with special guests Nikki Sixx and John 5. All the numbers. My Blue Tears featuring Simon Le Bon. Is My
There it
Blue
is.
Tears a Duran Duran song?
No.
Is that a Simon Le Bon
I
song?
think it's a Dolly Parton song, actually. I forgot to look it up.
I don't know that one. Because that would be the only one on here that's not, I think, of the artist that's being included.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not familiar with it, but you'd know better than I would. And Heartbreaker with Pat Benatar and Neil Giraldo. There's tons of others too. This is just some of them.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm buying
the
that
album's
album.
it's now available for
that sounds
pre-order.
good.
The first song, an unoriginal titled. The first song, unoriginal. Did I say unoriginal?
An unoriginal song.
It's just
Derivative
a rip-off.
garbage.
Yeah.
More Dolly Parton shit.
The first song, an original titled "World on Fire," will be available on May 11th. Huh. Joe Nagy says, or should I just say Joe, right? Should I say people's last name? I don't know. Joe says, it's his response to something he said earlier.
Oh,
Joe,
yeah.
Dolly is now dancing with Satan, putting out a rock album. He did say later that he was just kidding.
Yeah. Well, Dolly has been crossing lines with artists. Like she doesn't, she started as a country artist, but you know, it's good to be the queen. I mentioned this story to my wife and she said, I was told her the story of this album and she said, and who are the proceeds going to? And I said, it doesn't even matter because if she gets all the proceeds, she still gives it away. So you don't have to earmark it for anything.
And if she didn't, she deserves every nickel.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Speaking of which, we're going to make a left turn and go to Dollywood either on the way or a right turn on the way back.
Are you?
From SFGE this year.
Yeah. Good call. I've never been to Dollywood. Spent a lot of time in that area, in Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg in that area. But every time I'm there, it's the winter, and Dollywood is a seasonal thing. So you got to go in the summer.
Yep. Marcus reminds us that Prince's slave and his changing his name to a symbol, which I aptly named Godoing, because that's what the symbol looked like to me.
Godoing.
The artist formerly known as, was all about Warner Brothers owning the master recordings to his music. So there you go. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. All right. Hey, finally, in sad 1980s news, as reported by Variety and Pitchfork, MTV News is shutting down. Now, it's sad not because I get my news from there. I haven't watched it in 30 years.
But I didn't even know it was still going.
Yeah.
I really didn't.
I read it. I'm like, MTV still has news?
Wow.
No wonder they're shutting down if I didn't have a clue. When do they air it? Between, crazy people in a house together and whatever reality stuff and, jabronis from New Jersey or whatever the shows they have. When do they run news?
Jabronis on the beach. Yeah.
I'm sure there's a better name for that.
Yeah. But apparently, and again, look, we didn't even know it was around, but I guess being reminded, it's a funny experience thing because we're reminded first, hey, that thing you liked when you were younger, it's still around. It just got canceled.
A shadow of itself, and it's garbage, and you're done.
It's like putting John in the writer's room. Oh, sorry, come back out.
Right.
Handing him a sign.
Yeah, Joe was saying MTV News died a long, 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 long time ago.
That's true. Yeah.
It's just now official.
Yeah, I'd be curious what it looks like. Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be a lot of news to me because they'd be talking about artists I have no clue who they are.
Right.
I'd be by the pen and paper, like, who is this again? Little who? I guarantee it's a little.
Lil Nas X. I know him now because he was in Muppets Mayhem. That's why I know who it is.
Oh yes, I saw him in the trailer. Yep.
Yeah.
So the news program of the game-changing music channel is shuttering operations after 36 years, following widespread layoffs. 25% of employees across MTV Entertainment Studios, Paramount Media Networks, and Showtime were laid off on May 9th, roughly 5 years after MTV had a significant layoffs in 2017. In a memo to staff viewed by Pitchfork, Showtime, MTV Entertainment Studios, and Paramount Media Networks president Chris McCarthy wrote that senior leaders, quote, in coordination with HR, made the very hard but necessary decision to reduce the domestic team by approximately 25%. End quote. I didn't look. I knew I watched MTV News, but if I had to tell you what year it began, and I didn't know, I couldn't recall.
Right.
But apparently, it emerged in 1987 with just the one show, The Week in Rock, hosted by Kurt Loder, of course.
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
When I think of MTV News, that's all I can think of is I just see Kurt Loder on that set that looked like they put it together with some pallets and crap they found backstage, and it had that grimy, independent look, and that's why I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Grimy.
The show also included correspondents like Alison Stewart, Tabitha Soren, I remember Sarah Tartha, and later Meredith Graves, reporting throughout the years. Their coverage spanning music, politics, sex, pop culture, and more. And look, we're picking up the slack here on our own show here. There you go. Let's see. In the ensuing years, reporters for MTV News went on to win Emmy Awards and Peabody Awards for pieces on natural disasters in the Iraq War. Things totally unrelated to music. In 2017, multiple MTV News writers were laid off as the Clary said that already. Anyway, I don't know. It's kind of a bummer.
Yeah. I guess I don't feel that bummed about it, though, since I didn't know it was there.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So being reminded and then... Okay. But
Brad said here in the chat, he's like, at least they provided some news 35 years later. Like, this is the first MTV news we've heard in forever. And it's the news of their demise. Yeah. Yep.
All right, Kat, I'm going to give you a scenario, okay?
Okay.
You came home today. You weren't in your house at some point, and then you came home.
Mm-hmm.
Just feels like a normal day,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Then you come home instead. Scenario number 2, you come home, I'm there, and I say, Kat, earlier Simon Laban was here, but now he's gone.
Oh, jeez.
Now, would you be like with the MTV News analogy I'm trying to make? Well, I didn't even know he was here, so it doesn't make a difference to me.
That's a very different scenario for me.
All right. You think that. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to think about that as we say, that was 1980s news. There you go.
I wonder if listeners also kind of like, they dance along with the music. Like we do.
Like Kat does?
Yeah.
And you do sometimes?
Do any of you dance with us?
No.
You dance with the music?
Oh, come on, tell us. Craig, Craig, tell me you dance with us.
Right.
Come on.
Now she's
I know
trying to-
Marcus is absolutely shuffling when he hears the music.
Oh, every
And
day
then we cut
he's
to a
shuffling.
live stream of the camera we have in Marcus's living room.
I stab
Sing
a
and
voodoo doll to the beat.
Huh. So I see John flinching every now and then.
Who's the doll of?
Oh, that's why it looks like John's dancing.
You're right. I'm getting poked in the half ass.
He's being forced. Oh, no. Oh,
Shar
Craig
says
doesn't
no. We
dance.
sit on the couch with the cats. There you go.
You
He's
can dance with
so
cats. They love it.
Eating
Oh.
and not dancing.
Brad loves the intro music. Sorry, Marcus. Yeah. There you go. See? Somehow word is getting out.
The doll has great hair, so we know who the doll is now.
Ooh.
Wait, what? I missed that.
The voodoo doll
great
has
hair.
great hair.
It's a gray hair. Either way, it would be me.
Both. Either way, you're a winner.
All right. Hey, as we said earlier, we're going to be talking about 1980s radio, our experience with the radio, what I'm mostly curious about, and folks in the chat here live on Facebook and YouTube, about your experience with radio in the 1980s, because it was fairly ubiquitous. And I do have some stats with regards to some things. I don't know to what extent I'll bring these in, but I guess just to sort of, start this off was to tell you about my own experience, or just to set this up. You know what? No, skip that. Before that, let me give you this. Just to sort of, I guess, provide some context, at least, that backs us up with a statistic, because then I feel like this segment is legitimate.
Okay.
In the 1980s, a study revealed that 99% of American households owned a radio, as compared with 98% owning a television. And the average American household had 5.5 radios in their homes. We're not talking about car radios. That's something else. Now, those people were living large. I think we had like 2 radios. Now, I guess at some point in the 1980s, everything you bought had a radio built into it. I mean,
there you
alarm
go.
clocks had radios. And
That's the thing.
Yes.
That's
Get
the
a-
thing.
I think
Right,
that's
because
it. Yes.
your hi-fi, it was called a hi-fi. Your hi-fi had a tuner in it. You may have purchased a receiver later that had a tuner in it. I had a $6 million man accessory that had a radio receiver in it.
Wow.
Yeah, you could listen to AM radio on this backpack. No, it was maybe, I don't know, but no, you can listen to AM
tune in
radio.
Tokyo to, all right, never mind. To Oscar.
Yes. But yes, everything had a radio. So maybe you didn't buy 5.5 radios, but I
Yeah.
can see how easy it would be to end up having,
Yes.
even if you don't listen to
Yes.
1 or 2 of them, to have them everywhere. Because you're probably each bedroom that has an alarm clock, as you said, probably a radio, right? My boom box, my big Sony boom box has a radio in it. Yep.
Yeah, it wasn't the goal to own that many.
Yeah, but you had them.
My first
Right.
Walkman, it wasn't Walkman brand. It was a knockoff, but that had a tuner involved in it that I never used. I was always listening to
Right.
tapes. But
That's just another thing. You're right. I never used it.
That's
Yeah,
right.
not either.
yeah. Yeah.
Could you walk with a knockoff Walkman, or does it start falling apart? It says like, do
specific.
not rattle, do not,
Oh, no, it's a
do not walk.
man or strut man. You had to have
Ooh.
different walks.
I see.
Mine
Very
was
good.
a sit on my bed man.
Oh.
I had 2 of those.
Stereo, quadraphonic, or quadrangle. Michael says I had a knockoff Walkman that was just a radio. Yeah, there you go. Just like Kat was saying.
Yeah, not even a tape deck. Sure. Yep.
But as a result of having 5.5 radios simply in your home, and maybe again it was your microwave that did it, or your refrigerator, I don't know.
Oh, wow.
And in your cars,
Steve Austin backpack.
it seemed to me, this is again, and now this is turning to somewhat anecdotal, that we were able to, much like the 80s films that we enjoyed that were scored with popular music, we wound up being able to score our lives either consciously by setting what music we wanted to hear as we just went about our routines or we're just driving down the road, or these songs for me were playing at a time I had a significant memory of, experience that wound up for me becoming, sort of entangled or embedded, together, so that they're inseparable. I guess I'll give you an example. Like I can't hear "Turn Around, Bright Eyes." I can't hear Bonnie Tyler, "Total Eclipse of the Heart," without thinking about being in my next door neighbor's basement for her, like, I don't know, 13th birthday party, wondering if I was going to slow dance with the girl.
Ooh.
That kind of thing.
Well, music has that same effect, just like to a lesser extent than like olfactory triggers, right? So I think they say that like olfactory scent is connected to so much in your memory that you can just smell a smell and be transported back there.
Oh,
and I think to a slightly lesser degree, music is like that too, especially if and often, like for you, it's a moment. For me, when music from that era hits, it's more of like a feeling. Like wait, why am I feeling kind of sad now? Oh, because this song. Like it happens unexpectedly, and then you have to figure out. Like you have to trace it back and go, oh, because of this song is that whatever happened. So.
I mentioned here before that I had that experience with the Guardians of the Galaxy's first movie. And it wasn't 80s music, of course, in that, but it just shot me back. Like I had to hold on for dear life because I was like, oh my gosh. Because I can, remember where I was when I heard some of those songs. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true for me too, Kat, with that first film. In particular, because some of those songs I associate with my parents because it was a time when I first heard them, I was still living at home. I was still young. Some of the songs were ones that predate our ability to select music, and I associate with them putting on a record or a radio station they would listen to then. And I don't usually then recommend films to my parents, but I remember having seen the first one. I was like, you guys have to see it. I'm not going to tell you anything about it. Just knowing that in the very least, they would really appreciate the music in it.
They would appreciate that. Absolutely.
Well, and even more so, other than the songs being in the film, the films, all of them feature, great pop music, is that the music was a treasure that the characters loved and wanted. It wasn't just playing in the background. You taught me a new word last time that I've already forgotten about. The characters in the movie know the music is there. Right? They're hearing it.
Diegetic.
Diegetic.
Right. Is that where you can't process sugar? Is that the same thing as that?
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, okay. Right.
I have no fear.
But the characters in Guardians, they know the music is there. It's not just in the background right there.
Yeah. Right. But speaking in the background.
I'm saying some horrible things I know I need to cut out later.
Oh, no.
That only our Facebook and YouTube audience has to be.
We'll know what we did. That's right.
Oh, no.
Karen says, what's funny is about a year ago that one of my friends from Retro Network, Adam, and I had same Sony CD player boombox.
Oh, cool.
I wonder statistically, it's probably pretty high, though, right? I mean, I don't know if there was many choices. I mean, maybe there were.
That's a good point. No.
Brad says the slow dance was some serious, powerful magic work in the teenage years. Yeah, it was. Yeah. Some very specific.
A school-sanctioned hug. Yes.
Now you can't do that, right? They can't do that now.
Yeah.
I me too'd somebody with a slow dance, during slow dance.
So here's some things to make our conversation seem legitimate. And actually, I'm leading to a point here. And actually, I'm reminded of this, and I want to sort of, as we share our memories here, to talk about this, so listen to our conversation with Larry the Duck Dunn. And part of talking to Larry that we learned is that, again, he was the music director for all of the 1980s, everyone's experience. The whole decade, every year, every moment.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry.
More particularly at WLIR in New York. But what we learned is, unlike other stations at the time, he let his DJs play whatever they wanted. Now they would get in new records, and they had some stuff that would come in straight, from England, from London, and they'd get it right off a plane in, at I think JFK. And so they would have brand new music. Some of them were demos folks had never heard. So he would play. They would have these listening parties, and folks would hear we've got this. But ultimately, what they played was the DJs could play whatever they want. So they had a lot of freedom. Now all stations weren't like that. And part of the challenge as time goes on, we're going to learn here, is that there's been great consolidation and conglomeratization
Homogenization, all the zations, all the bad zations.
Yes, all the bad zations.
Zations and the zations.
So until the 1980s, most commercial radio stations were affiliated with large networks such as ABC, CBS, Mutual Broadcasting, NBC, and others. Then the traditional major networks that had dominated American radio up until that point began to be dissolved. And there's a number of different reasons why that happened. And so you still had a lot of smaller regional local stations. It was more mom and pop earlier in the 1980s. As we go on through the decade, though, things start to change. Let's stay with this for a moment, I guess. While we're in the 1980s, still and early on. So, where's my little list here? Here it is. Here's my list of memories and things I wanted to mention.
Okay.
For whatever
write them
reason,
down because you didn't remember them.
No, I wrote them down while I remembered them. Still, yeah.
Oh,
Before
in
I
case you
forget.
didn't remember them later. Okay.
Oh, there's no chance I'd remember them later.
Oh, okay. All right.
You know what happens actually is I might have a little bit of anxiety that I won't remember them all. So I can eradicate that entirely if I just put them all down. That's why I write down literally everything. Like, as you know, literally it says, welcome back to 1980s now. Not that I don't know it. I just don't have to worry that I don't know. Anyway.
Don't have to worry.
Enough about
What's the name of the show again? Oh, it just
Will
escaped
needs
my-
a therapist. Yeah. Will needs therapy. This predates the 1980s for me, is opportunities to, with me and my friends, my sister, pretend to be a DJ, a radio DJ. Why did that happen? Why? What was it about radio that we were so enamored that we wanted to connect with it in that way or do it ultimately? Did you guys do that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yes. I actually have a tape of
You still have it? I don't have any of my tapes.
I do. Yeah, I have one of us being really goofy and pretending to be radio DJs. And we even had guests on, so we would impersonate the guests.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I have a clip of that, actually. So here's a clip of Kat and her friends and family in the 1980s pretending to have their own radio show. And I challenge anyone to explain what they're saying, what they're talking about, what the words are. Here's Kat and company.
Everybody, we're gonna have some famous goodbyes here. Okay, bye, George. Goodbye, everyone. Come back and see us on Z100. Okay, Grandmother. Wait, see us on Z100. This isn't Z100. Yes, it is. This is Z100. Yeah. Wait a minute, Mom. We gotta finish these famous goodbyes. We'll be right on. Okay, Skinner.
My favorite thing is that you hear her mom calling for her.
you picked up on that?
Yeah. Hey, kids! What is it, Mom? Just like Scott Shannon.
You know what this is? At every family get-together, there was always one gang of girls who were off playing by themselves, and you heard the adults in the kitchen, they're rob, 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 and you heard the boys outside, just making noise. And then you hear in the room, squeak, like there's just chaos going on, rapid fire. And it just, the energy, something about little girls when they get together in a room like that.
I have to tell you, at the end of that clip, my uncle, you can hear my uncle going, do you know what you guys sound like? That sounds horrible.
Oh, what? Yes. Wow, I wish I had gotten that far. I would've kept it in.
Oh, I didn't have the Cat and Company morning show when I played to be a DJ. It was just solo Johnny. It was all it is. But yeah.
That would have gotten you out of bed, though. To at least turn it off. God dang it! What is that?
It's Cat in the Morning Zoo.
You want Muppet Mayhem?
Well done.
Oh, so much feedback here in the chat.
Oh, no.
Marcus says sounds like they needed a will to rein them in.
Oh, I thought you meant because they were going to die.
We
will.
Their uncle was about to kill him. Brad asks, were you guys snorting pixie sticks?
Probably.
No.
Oh, thanks, Karen. She said it was awesome.
Oh, there you go. Oh, yeah, Karen commiserates us with, not commiserates, that's the wrong word, but remembers also her fondness for DJs, remembering her career day in middle school. One of the local DJs, Domino from Power 99, came in.
Oh.
I don't remember any other guests because all we wanted to do was talk to Domino. Yeah.
Ah. Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
The
And
problem with radio personalities was you didn't know what they looked like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
So they had this anonymity, and then they would be the grand marshal at the Christmas parade. And you're like, who the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
Right? Like it says,
Danger,
he's from
danger.
WXY or whatever. I'm like, he's just some knucklehead with a balding spot sitting on the back of a convertible. Give me a celebrity.
I don't recognize him.
Yeah, I agree. And it was a disconnect because I do remember, we talked about this before. In New York, Z100 was the big radio station
Yes.
for us, ultimately. There was some other music I listened to I'll talk about in a moment, but they put out, ultimately they had publicity, they had commercials, they had, it was like, it's like that thing where I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you only talk to someone on the phone, maybe at work, and then you finally meet them. Yeah, I'm going to cut that all out because our jobs are full-time podcasters, and I see you guys all the time. Let's go back to the comments here. So, Miss So says that my brother and I would record an album ourselves as tape as kids. Yeah, and Michael and Brad, folks, bring up something else. Another thing I want to talk about was Michael writes, early on, before I had my own money to buy my music, I would record my favorite songs on the radio on cassette.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And Brad writes, anyone else narrate your mixtapes like a DJ?
Oh.
Kind of combining it. So imagine you guys recorded your music right off the radio.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, sure.
Having to time
wait.
things.
And wait because I knew it was coming, and I'd wait.
Yeah.
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 And some
Did you ever
knucklehead's
get-
always talking over the beginning or the end all the time.
There's always that
Did you ever have a request or dedication that you were able then to record, Cat out in Belmar has requested this one for Cat.
Huh. I don't think I could ever get
No?
through. I'm sure I tried to
Yeah.
put in a request. Yeah.
Yeah.
Never.
I remember calling radio stations just getting a busy signal all the time.
Yes. Oh, I tried to
Yep.
call for tickets, concert tickets. I could never get through.
Well, you know the secret for calling for concert tickets, right?
Oh.
You dial the
secret?
first 6 numbers, and then you wait until they say call now, and you dial the 7th one.
Where were
that
you
way-
when I needed you, John?
I was here in Florida. You're that much further ahead of everybody. Now maybe everybody else was doing that, but that I always did that. I knew the numbers, rotary, and they're like, and now call now to the 100 zoo, and phones are open. One, so I hit it out.
How did you time that before you got the if you dialed 6 numbers or whatever
I just do it over and over. If I got the I would
mean,
stop and dial the first 6 again. Yeah, absolutely.
You just do it again. Yep.
You're dedicated. I never won anything, but the system felt good.
Yeah.
You felt good about it. That's all that matters.
Marcus writes, every Friday night during the summer, I was 12, I would hang out editing pizza.
Editing.
Hang on, I got to put my glasses that way. I told you. Eating pizza.
Editing
I went on the
pizza.
radio. I was listening to the
Pizza.
radio to win next week's
Like-
pizza from WKMX.
Well, that sounds like a
We're going
sweet
to edit
deal.
out this mushroom. We're going to edit out this little piece of onion.
Marcus
Oh, absolutely. Edit out that green
had a
pepper.
lot of free pizza. That's awesome. But
Sweet deal.
yeah, I remind me. This is what I wanted to mention with regard to recording stuff. I remember, when hip hop certainly they had stations started playing rap music. Shortly after rap music started becoming popular, so it predated my. Well, I guess I was interested in music even going back to the Sugar Hill Gang and some of the earliest recordings of rap music, and I had some of those records. But on the radio, we had throughout the '80s, we had Cool DJ Red Alert and Chuck Chill Out. We're on Kiss FM. And they would DJ on weekends, like at 11 o'clock at night for a couple of hours. And so I'd wind up staying up if I wasn't already, trying to just stay up just to record, at least hit record so that I could fit as much as I could on a tape. Maybe flip it over if I was waking up after 45 minutes, and then it would be it's just nonstop mixing of one rap song after another. It was fantastic.
Nice.
So, look, we talked about, for me, music being scored, again, sort of aspects of our life. I woke up to music because my mother would have the oldies station come on the, the kitchen. That was how we woke up. That's why I hate oldies. Also, car trips, you'd have Casey Kasem on the top 40.
Oh, yes.
Well, speaking of recording things off the radio,
Okay.
the nerdy thing that I would do, because I'm sure somebody did it, but they were all in their 40s when they did it, and I was 13. But I have the most eclectic taste in just auditory anything. I love old radio shows and just
Yeah.
like give me an album that's like full of Kentucky Fried Chicken jingles from 1973. Love it. Like anything like that, right? But I would stay up because in Orlando on WDBO at about 11 o'clock at night, they would run the then syndicated CBS Radio Mystery Theater, which was effectively a 70s version of radio drama from like the 40s and 50s. And I would always fall asleep during them. But if I was awake, I wasn't supposed to be awake at 11, by the way, but I'd stay up till 11 to push record on my boombox. So the next day I could listen to this cool radio show in mono that played overnight. And they didn't talk over it because it was a show that they were talking in already. And it was always a mystery and somebody got killed or turned into a witch got him or Frankenstein or something crazy. It was those monster shows, but loved it. Stole it off the radio.
Any specters?
Only the shadow knows. And not specter, but yeah, John, you bring up a good point because while I'm focusing on music, there was tons of other types of radio programming that became, certainly that predates the 1980s, but in the 1980s, talk radio became even bigger because of some changes in regulation that we won't get into. But yeah, other types of radio that certainly held our interest. What was the other thing I was going to mention here? But I wanted to
Cat and I.
Well, yeah, but also, again, thinking about Larry the Duck. I like you guys a lot. I love you guys, both of you. Is how radio introduced us to new music, because LIR had literally was introducing us to what they called new music, and a lot of it was new wave. What we think of as new wave music, but I learned a lot of hip hop and rap songs that I hadn't heard, but for hearing them Chuck Chill at midnight on a Saturday night. It's unfortunate. So again in the 1980s. So that's how what's my point going to be? I don't know. Oh, hey, 80s life is here. Tell the show's been on for a while now already. But so here's my point. And at that time in the 1980s, a lot of stations again still had some flexibility, freedom with regard to they played. I'm sure payola came into some of it, but some of those things were regulated and technically illegal. Today, it's not the case. Now, technically, folks can get paid, to play specific songs, and it's a source of revenue. Yeah. But again, comparing the 1980s, where I mentioned to you how we had these the big networks, ABC and so forth, were affiliated with radio stations, and then it started to get broken up, dissolved as time went on. There was a law change in 1996 where they deregulated some aspect. The FCC was deregulating some aspects of their laws that govern these things, allowing radio or large companies to buy up more radio stations. There had been limits, which again gave us more variety and competition. I'm going to skip a bunch of this to go fast forward to 37 years ago. 50 companies were in charge of most American media. Now, 90% of media in the U.S. is controlled by 6 corporations.
Wow. Yeah.
But that's not enough for them, because in 2020, these folks were again going before the U.S. government and arguing that, and because there's still some restraints. There was a loosening up in the 1990s, like I mentioned, but they were arguing that there's too much restraint still. And they're arguing, get this shit. They were arguing that you have to make it so we could buy as many radio stations as we want, because these little radio stations that are out there, they can't compete with streaming. And who's going to help these guys? They're just going to go out of business.
Wow.
Meanwhile, the little radio stations say, we're fine. We're good. We'll compete or we won't.
We don't need all your corporate oversight. We're good. Yeah. Thank you.
But these changes in the law, if they were able to get them to be passed, will allow these corporations to essentially buy most, if not all in certain circumstances, all of the radio stations in certain areas.
Wow.
And as I mentioned, a lot of the freedom that folks had in the radios, like Larry had, to introduce what they wanted to play, or introduce the country to these bands. When you've got 6 corporations running, some huge percentage that I've got written down somewhere here of the music, they get to say what you hear and don't hear. I'll give you an example going back to the early 2000s. If you remember, the Dixie Chicks criticized George Bush, then president, during a concert. I want to say it was Clear Channel. I might be wrong. They told all their radio stations, don't play Dixie Chicks anymore.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So do you think, Will, maybe I'm tone deaf because I live on the internet, but is the the pull that these radio stations and now these media conglomerates have on what we listen, isn't that diminishing somewhat with the advent of on-demand, listen to what I want to, just say, hey, digital assistant, play me some Dixie Chicks or the Chicks or whatever they're called now, or, Chicken Filet, whatever they call themselves. But you can play what you want when you want it. You're not at the mercy of what the DJ decides to put out.
Yes, you would think so. But the data actually suggests that terrestrial radio, even though it's been declining slowly over years, still pretty high.
Just a high footprint.
I've got some stats for you on that. It's still, in fact, radio is still has the highest reach of any medium, including social media.
Sure.
Whereas radio reaches 88% of Americans each week. As a result, you've got 293 million Americans listening to radio every week, as compared to only 180 million going on Facebook for information and entertainment there.
I would think there's a demographic schism there as well, because most likely, maybe let's say Gen Z and later, I don't think they're listening to the radio. I don't think they have a radio. They don't have a boombox that has a receiver in it, right? They have a phone. And they took the receiver out of a phone back in, there was a short time that Android had a radio receiver in a phone. They took it out. So you can't even buy a phone anymore that has it.
Right.
And I think young people, just like young people are fleeing Facebook, I think young people, they're not fleeing radio. They're not aware of radio unless they get in the car. And I'm like, I didn't request whatever this song is. Why is it playing? It just happens to be a radio on. I think older people are more susceptible to the influence of radio still.
John, I thought the same thing, but probably the most surprising thing I learned in reading about this is that more than half of Gen Z listens to terrestrial radio. According to Edison Research, the AM/FM radio reach among Gen Z ages between 13 and 24 is high at 55%.
Maybe it's a car thing. Maybe when they drive.
Well, 13-year-olds aren't driving. You mean like their parents would be?
I mean the older Gen Zs.
Forced?
Like my kids drive.
Or maybe the young kids have to listen to their parents who listen to the radio, to John's point, older folks.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know. Nothing I read suggested that they were, their consumption was because they were beholden to someone else deciding, or because they had no other options. But even in cars, now the only time I listen to terrestrial radio is like if I'm in an Uber and the guy's got the radio on, or I rent a car and it doesn't have Sirius or something like that. Maybe.
Even then, I sync my phone if I can and listen to whatever I've got saved on my phone if I don't have signal. But
right.
Again, like I said, I live on the internet, so I'm definitely skewed. And you have to consider there's a lot of people that don't live and die by their phones, and they don't stay on the internet all the time. I think Gen Z does, but I guess I'm wrong.
Yeah. Some comments here. Brad asked about pirate radio stations. They used to be a thing. I don't know if that's still happening, but I would suggest you don't need them anymore, because essentially anybody can have an internet radio station. You have to pay some sort of fee. Maybe the pirate aspect, Brad, is folks finding a way to do it without paying a fee. And I know there's those out there, because we've actually been approached by some of these internet radio stations to put our show on them, and it's like shady. It's just shady.
Yeah. Yep.
You don't get any sense they're paying anybody to play these songs, and no one's going to hear our show on there.
I'm with Michael. Michael's calling BS on that survey. It just doesn't ring true to me. I'm like,
Yeah.
So let's do a quick survey here. Not of us. Think of 10 people you know. How many of them have you seen or heard of listening to terrestrial radio in the last 3 months?
Yeah, not
my number's 0.
Yeah.
Me.
I would say not lately, but usually during the warmer months, there's one or two neighbors. You could hear they're listening to they have it on outside.
The actual radio. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'll hear the local DJ or ads or whatever like that. But no, to your point, I agree. Anecdotally, no, not a whole lot of people. But and so look, the sad thing is, unlike our experience in the 80s where there was such diversity in music as a result of this consolidation, and you think about these generations that are coming up listening to radio that's owned by only a few companies, they're not going to be exposed to new music the way that we were.
Right.
Add to that the fact that I don't think this made the air maybe, but we talked about a statistics where there's 128,000 new songs released every day.
That's crazy.
Via all the platforms, streaming and so on. This is going to sound like, I think let's see. Let me have some here. Let's see. This is the segment called
I don't like everything the way it is now compared to the way it used to be.
I mean, it just, I feel for the kids. Music for me played such a romantic role in my life. I associate music with certain loves I had in my life, you know?
Sure.
So literally romantic in that way, but romantic in the, you know, sort of a broader sense that I don't know that coming generations will be able to because of these changes and so forth. I don't know.
So here, do people still have our song? Is that still a thing?
Oh.
The cool thing about our song is it was coincidental. It usually became your song because of the circumstance. Maybe it was playing when you met, or your first kiss, or your first or whatever it was, and you remember that song. And then when it accidentally comes on the air, you're like, oh, what a great surprise! You remember that person or whatever, right? And now, since you can cherry pick what you want, anything is your song. I mean, it's just maybe I don't know. It's a thing. I'm asking. I don't know, but. I mean, I remember for each girlfriend I had, there was a song. Like, I still know what it is. And when I hear it, I still remember that relationship. But I don't know if there's that kind of, if that's connected any longer in the same way.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I think my son and his girlfriend have a song. I don't remember what it is.
Do they? Okay.
If they told me, yeah.
It's a Baby Got Back, I think. Again, so much stuff I'm going to cut
Marcus
out.
Marcus is saying, why wouldn't they have their song? Music still happens.
Yeah.
But it's cherry picked. You're like, I found our song, and you vet it and you find out. I think that your song that I remember growing up, you didn't pick it. Picked you. It was what was playing when you had a relationship or blossomed or whatever.
It was in the
I agree.
background. Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, these moments that I'm referring to, we're talking about these sort of triggers for me in the way that smell triggers memories. You're right, John. It was a song on the radio that just happened to come on. And I could tell you where, this is serious. This is a real example. I could tell you where I was when I hear Push It, for some reason, I think of this moment at a traffic light in Bayonne, New Jersey with my buddy Craig. I don't know what we were doing, but I'm transported right there.
Yep.
And I have several of those. You're right, associated with different people. You're right. If the music is too curated, either because you're using an AI like Spotify or you're listening to a playlist that's already on your phone, it's different. Yeah.
It is. It is different.
You think? I don't know. Maybe not.
Oh, it definitely is. I think there's one thing for it to be organic. There's another thing for it to be manufactured. And some of the music some of the magic of that discoverability and that association isn't there. If I want Danger Zone to be the song for every relationship, I'll just put it on a loop now until I meet somebody. I'm like, hey, you're the one. Danger Zone's our song.
Wow.
You can make it happen.
That's great. Such a curious psychological, like, had you thought about that when you were a teenager, first falling in love with people? That would be interesting to now look back in your 50s. Like, what would that?
Yeah. What song would you have picked for that relationship, knowing what you know now?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's see what they've got in the things here. Brad says, my concern is trending music bits on TikTok and such are what ends up trending with some 20-somethings I see in my family. Yeah, you know, and the thing I referred to earlier about how many new songs are coming out was about an article that we wound up not doing on the show, was how some record executives were lamenting that artists are no longer developed because of this phenomenon that Brad's talking about. A new song is hot for 24 hours. We touch on this a little bit with Larry. And it's gone, and that's it.
Poof.
But I feel like we're veering away from radio, but that's okay. We should be wrapping up anyway. What else? Anything else?
Say
that's probably good enough. Yeah. You just gotta jump big.
I'm sorry, there's no time, Cat.
I tried. And anybody out there hear me say, speaking of, well, I
thought you were talking to Brad. I'm sorry.
We thought you were saying hi to Marcus again.
I need a voodoo doll.
With good hair.
No, bad hair. Bad hair.
Oh, that's me.
With the ball cap. No, not that. With the ball cap. Just doing the opposite.
It's not that I didn't get to say anything, but it wasn't anything I really wanted to say. I guess.
Whose fault is that?
It's mine. It's completely mine. I just, radio, on the topic of radio, I feel like there's three different things that were important for me. One, when I was younger, pre-80s, it was on in the background, but only in the summer. It just wasn't something we did at any other time because part of my summer was spent at a cabin in the Catskills.
Okay.
And we never listened to the radio at home.
At
It was
home,
never on
okay.
at home. But in the radio or in this cabin, it was. And so I woke up to a lot of the songs that were popular in the 70s. And so hence my attachment to them. And in the 80s, music was super important as an adolescent. And we listened to Z100 like you did, Will. And Craig mentioned WJLK. That was another station that we used to listen to. And it wasn't, I don't hear any songs from that time, and they don't transport me back to a certain time or place. But I think of my bedroom mostly that I shared with my sister. And because we chose to always have the radio playing as much as possible. And we got to paint our own room one time when I forget how old I was probably 12 or 13. And we had a whole wall dedicated to all of the artists on the radio that we loved. And Michael Jackson was up there, and of course Duran Duran and Boy George and George.
Did you paint the artist or like their logos?
Their names and some logos. Some of them.
Oh, I was going to say, I want to see your representation of like Michael Jackson.
Oh, no, you don't.
Well, she did a great Simon from the calendar.
Yeah, that wasn't too bad. Yeah, no, we did. It was like you would see it on an album cover, and if we weren't sure, we just kind of did it, like something kind of fun. But the wall, it was covered, and we called it the music room. I wish I had pictures of this. There's probably pictures of this somewhere. Yep. And then another way radio was really important to me was when I was in high school and I needed to get away from my family. We lived in a super small house. It was the second story of a 2-family home. And I had an aunt and uncle that lived downstairs in the summer, but it was just open, nobody was there in the winter time. So I would go downstairs into their home with their permission. And that's where I would do my homework, and I would turn on the radio. They enjoyed CBS FM from 101.1 from New York. And that's just what I would keep on. I think I was afraid of changing the station. And
you had like your own little private music apartment?
I did. And so nice. I loved oldies. They played oldies, which I also loved because I would hear that in the summer sometimes. And so I think that's all I had to say about radio stations.
She was taking notes of every time we shut her down, going, I'm getting all this in. We're sorry, Kat. Much. We did not mean to steamroll you.
No,
I did not mean to. I don't know,
no, you guys were excited. Oh, yeah.
I feel like we need to do some role play. Like, I'm going to talk, Kat, and I'm going to keep talking until you're able to interrupt me talking.
Okay.
And if you just keep insisting that you have something to say, or we won't waste anybody's time with this. We'll do this off air. Okay?
You know what? It's usually
I don't know what.
never.
I'm going to keep talking until you make me stop talking.
Or are we going to rehearse the show now? Is that something new we're going to do?
Oh, yes.
We're just going to. Can't you tell everyone it's
an
rehearsed?
issue because you usually stop and you say, "Oh yes, Kat."
Honestly, seriously, you waved earlier, and so I really wasn't sure.
I was waving at Marcus.
I know, but I just wasn't sure anymore what your signals were. So I thought if I keep stopping every time I see you do a gesture.
I'm sorry. I get a little punchy when we're live.
Psst, Kat, may I suggest a new gesture to get Will's attention?
Oh.
Yes, one finger, this one. Let me get ahead of John.
I have a slightly different recommendation, but along the same vein, yes.
That's my gesture for John.
Oh, Will.
All right. Hey, let's say that was our show. Hey, that's the show, everybody.
And this show, like all others, is brought to you every week, thanks in part to our early adopters, like...
Brad wrote throw a pickle.
Sorry.
Brad wrote throw a pickle. That's what
throw a pickle. Squawk.
I would like to see a pickle hit the screen.
Oh.
I would definitely get one.
Kat has something to say.
I'm gonna have some gherkins ready for next.
Gherkins.
Goodness,
You just made it funnier, Cat. Throw a gherkin.
that's very specific. And they're all bumpy too, with little warts. Oh, that's perfect.
No. Marcus
the
wants
corn
us to
niblets.
vote. Marcus wants to vote on the gesture.
We'll get a poll. We'll do a poll.
Oh yeah. What was I saying?
I
Oh,
have
our
no
early
idea.
adopters like
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Kathy Burke, Rick
Yep.
Parker, and Karen Flieger, who's here with
Yay,
us
guys.
tonight.
Yay. Thanks, Karen.
Yay. And thank you especially to our secret of our success level Patreon supporters like John Henderson, Craig Coletta, Tony Great, and these three guys next are all
Okay.
here with us at some point
Okay.
tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Marcus Taylor, Brad Bowman, and Nick
BFF.
Guillory.
Nice.
Thanks,
Thank you so
guys.
much. Yeah, that was great.
And hey, if you want to be one of our quote unquote producers, head over to 1980snow.com/support to find out how you can join in that. But
Yes.
if you want to keep your distance a little bit, you can send us an email,
Understandably,
send us a
we get it.
message. If you don't want any part of this shenanigans,
Foolery.
make a post or email us. I'm Will at 1980snow.com. Cat is cat at 1980snow.com. Cat with a K, K-A-T. Or you can message us on Facebook, which we also reside there. In fact, we got a message from Nathan who writes, "Hey, gang, I'm a long-time listener of the podcast and completely forgot you folks had a Facebook presence.
Oh.
So we got to do a better job of letting folks know that. So I just started following you today. I'm happy to say I can now put your faces with your voices."
We're sorry.
I was going to pause for John to apologize.
For John.
Thanks again for all you do. And thanks for giving me and all the other 1980s Now followers something fun to listen to every Monday morning. He shouts with 2 exclamation points.
Wow.
And our buddy, Spun Counter Guy over on Instagram writes with regard to our the prank show, which I mean, it had legitimate content where we did talk about 1980 shows or shows that were too terrible to air. But there were some fake ones, and I played a horrible joke on you guys that I felt guilty about.
Featured my resting not having a blast face. Just
Not
like
having a blast face.
With regard to that episode, Spun Cutter Guy writes, "Brilliant episode. Kudos to the writer of those shows." Who's our buddy George. George wrote those synopses, those fake synopses.
Yep.
The thing is, it matches with some of those real shows in the 70s that were successful. You watch them now and think, how much cocaine did they have to snort to sign off on this thing?
Three cocaines.
3 cocaine.
Three. Whatever measurement you have.
Three cocaines.
Oh,
Or,
hey, we will.
or
Yep.
as is the current trend, you could stop by and leave a scathing review on iTunes. That's also an option.
Oh, yeah.
Seriously. I need to
that
get on a
too.
soapbox about that.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Oddly
Soapbox?
misinformed.
Ah, nice.
Soapbox.
I get it.
All right. Hey, everybody. We will talk to you next time on 1980s Now.
Until next time.
Pasta lasagna.
All right, you guys. I'm sorry. I know we were talking for a while. Can we just do a thing for Larry real quick here?
Are we doing it live?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So now we're going to pretend like what? We pretend like we didn't just do the episode we did. Okay. So you're going to hear me
Because
promote this episode.
This episode was inspired by the
Yeah,
one we're
yeah,
going to
yeah.
be introing. Yes.
Yes.
It happened one other time, but yeah.
I love time travel.
Okay, so we're going to time travel here. So I'm going to share another radio thing with you. Oh, you know what?
While you're shuffling, bye everybody. Who's saying goodbye?
Bye-bye.
Later.
Bye, Craig. Bye, Nicholas. Bye, Brad.
Craig, Brad. Marcus.
I can
Karen,
fake
3
it.
fingers worth of cocaine.
Michael,
That's right.
Miss
All right, see you
O,
guys. If you're hanging out, we're
Dawn.
going to record for another
Toodles.
5 minutes.
If you're still there.
Well, there's still 10 people watching, so careful what you say.
All right, there you go. Now that we got rid of all those losers.
All right.
We only got rid of
The,
one.
the
Will.
undedicated have left. Now those remaining are awesome.
Right.
Don't tell them we
still
said
here.
that, though.
Good night, Charlene.
Okay. Hey, welcome back to another special exclusive bonus
Super duper.
super duper interview episode here at the 1980s Now. Every Monday we record every Monday we normally talk about 1980s pop culture and its influence. Today,
Normally.
I'm all over the place. Let's try this again. Hey, welcome back to a super duper bonus exclusive episode of 1980s Now, a weekly examination of the importance of 1980s pop culture and its influence. Today, my name is Will, and joining me, as always, are my friends, Kat and John. Hey, guys.
Hey, guys.
Hey there. How's it going?
Yes, you can keep watching, Brad. It's fine. I know it might
Yeah.
seem weird, but we've been doing it for you. That's
Yeah.
fine.
What you don't want to miss, Brad, is that the first intro, I interjected super duper, and Will said, no, let's do it again.
Yeah.
I want the super
You
duper.
got that? He got that.
Oh, I catch it every time.
Yeah.
I just
now
had someone to point it out to now because Brad was
And now because John said that, all of it's staying in.
oh, the whole thing.
All right.
2 intros, 2 hellos.
That's how
Anyway,
you
well,
secured it.
normally on our Monday shows, we talk about different aspects of 1980s pop culture. Today, as usual on these super duper, my words, episodes, we bring you an interview with somebody who was important to that 1980s media. And this day is no special because today you're going to hear our chat with Larry the Duck Dunn.
Wow.
Right.
I knew he was going to quack. Now, when I pause, just know that I now know what John's going to do.
Yeah.
I got to get in that vibe with Kat, though, because she complains that we don't, rightfully so, we don't give her enough time to talk or something.
Oh, I was complaining about, yeah.
Well, not complaining. You're not complaining. You were right.
It's not
You
tough.
interjected.
I technically I quack every time you say duck, regardless of what whatever the reasoning
go.
is. If someone throws something at you and you holler duck, I go wah and get hit with it. I don't duck.
Yeah, that's
Right.
predictable.
There you go. So yeah, I'm not such a prescient or no, what's the word, prognosticator of John's behavior so much. He's just really predictable, as Kat said. It's anyway. So Larry the Duck. Let's talk about Larry for a moment because we're going to be speaking with him in just a few moments. He was the longtime music director for WLIR throughout the 1980s, and he was the youngest on-air personality there at that radio station as well. And as we're going to talk to Larry about how important LIR, the role they played in shaping 1980s music. I mean, seriously, it's hard to overstate this. This is a radio station, and at the time, I don't know. There was that station. There was ROQ in LA. I don't know if there was any station in the Midwest or South or other areas that were doing this type of thing. And maybe not just because how it took, the amount of time or logistics of getting new music to these areas. I don't know. We'll ask Larry how they got their new records, but as a result of their willingness to play new music and new wave music while everybody else was playing the same classic rock on every other station in the New York area, we got to hear you too. We got to hear Depeche Mode, Duran, Howard Jones, and on and on and on. Seriously, quite ridiculous.
I'm grateful to Larry the Duck.
Yeah.
Especially, I didn't have the benefit of growing up in the region where you were, but it reminds me a lot. I just recently watched a documentary about the V, which was the music video station in Boston that had much the same vibe. And while MTV was doing their thing, and this is pre VH1, this little independent video music thing, and they were like a groundswell, like this grassroots thing, and they would start getting huge celebrities when they came through Boston. Like going to the V was like going to see Friends because all the DJs were there, and they would get little heard of bands would come through there that didn't even have videos yet. They would interview them, and it's the kind of thing that, with the advent of payola that we know about and later, that kind of fell by the wayside. But little independent stations like the V and like LIR could do something, as you said, that's shaping what ended up being our pop music that otherwise we might not have heard about. We might not have heard about these bands unless somebody told us about them. Otherwise, we didn't have the internet to look it up. So who knew?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, in a situation with LIRs, had they not broken these bands, the other top 40 stations, as they became top 40 stations, wouldn't be playing these records because
They're not top 40 yet. Chicken or egg thing. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
But this got me thinking about how important radio was generally in my life throughout the 1980s, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on that as well. So we're going to talk about that on our next episode. But
Hey.
all right. I'll take notes. I'll be ready.
yeah, but I want
I'll
to
have
share.
my notes ready too.
Yes. You know what? Wait till the very end though to tell us all of them at once.
Okay. All right, will do. I'll make a note of that.
Love you.
You're ruining the illusion.
So immediately thinking about radio and thinking about I want to talk to you guys about radio on our next episode. It just got me thinking about all these different scenarios, situations in my life that involved radio, and there's lots, and I'll share most of them with you when we talk again. But I think maybe I shared this story before, Kat, but John probably wasn't around at the time, so I'm going to tell you anyway.
Okay, please do.
But this is how important radio was, right? Now, look, it was in different aspects of my life. I woke up to radio, my mom playing the radio.
Yeah.
Summers and car trips, the radio was always playing. Oftentimes it was my parents' music, what they were into. Later on, it became top 40, which was our music. Because
Yep.
And as you got older, as a teenager, you were able to. Part of your identity was what music you chose to play, or what station you listened to on the radio. I think, right? And so, and again, 'cause I'm trying to bring it back to, we're not talking about music generally. We're talking about radio specifically as a medium.
The radio, yeah.
For us, so again, for having a radio in your car, therefore, was important. For your friends to be in the car, play the radio. And I don't know if you guys had this experience, cruising.
Oh,
100%. Yep.
the Ocean Avenue strip.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, you have clearly stated that you went cruising through the Piggly Wiggly parking lot, Cat. We know that it wasn't Sunset Avenue.
Right.
I might have been doing donuts.
Watch out for the light post.
Yeah. Were you blasting something when you were
Oh, always.
on the radio with the windows down doing donuts?
Always, yep.
Grocery shopping music.
I wasn't always in charge of the radio, but yeah. But usually it was Bon Jovi or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I'll probably cut out that I'm saying this, but I feel the need to apologize. I'm sure I told this to you already. And sometimes it just, I don't know what I told you off the air versus on the air versus whatever. But anyway, yeah. So having a radio was, so as when I was growing up, the street that people cruised where I lived there in Jersey City, New Jersey, was Central Avenue, which was all the retail and the fast food places. And as I was younger, walking down the avenue to hang out with friends or whatever, because you were able to do that when you were a kid in the 80s, you just went wherever.
You just
You were able to, as a young person, I would observe guys driving by in their, their Camaros and their, Firebirds and their,
IROCs and yep.
with the radios down, blasting music. Oftentimes they were outfitted with these giant, speakers in the back, just vibrating the windows in the stores as they drove by. Fancy radios that I couldn't afford. So eventually, when I became a teen, we had used cars, hand-me-down cars or whatever. But I think the first car that I was able to drive around with as a teenager, independently of my parents, was because my buddy Craig was older than me and had his license, which meant we were able to drive his dad's car. Now, unfortunately, it was a Volkswagen Golf, which is not a sexy car. So we
But
had
it's a
that
car.
one.
You know what?
It's reliable.
It's wheels.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
right.
Yes.
Yep.
And we were counting on still with the VW Golf, driving down the avenue, windows down, playing whatever music. Now, unfortunately, where I lived, it was also bad with regard to radio theft. So your radios were stolen all of the time. You'd wake up, your windows were smashed. Car alarms were going off all hours of the night. So eventually, Craig's dad's car, the radio was stolen. So now we just had this, there's just a hole where the radio should be.
Double
We
in.
didn't want to be deterred from listening to the radio and while driving down the street. So again, I was a DJ already for many years at this point. So what I did was I took my radio, which was ready from my house, which was already too impractically large. And the wires that would have connected, it was essentially a boombox that I took apart. The wires that would have connected to the speakers, I cut off the speakers, get rid of the speakers. We don't need those. And I took the wires out of the dashboard where the radio should be, and I figured out which ones went to the speakers in the car, and I wired them together.
Oh, wow.
And so with this giant piece of a old boombox between my knees, essentially, on the passenger side of the car.
And that's running on batteries, like 7 double Ds or something.
Yes. Yes.
Wait, I think they're just called D-cell. That may be a Freudian slip. Sorry. Maybe they're single Ds. My mistake.
You gotta get a load of these batteries. But yeah, so we knew it was a clock ticking. Once we put those a fresh set of sexy batteries, we had to get going.
Very sexy batteries.
So we're driving down the avenue when we first got this, jury rigged set up between my legs with wires. It looked like the where the radio should have been almost looked like a robot was throwing up because it was like a opening.
The wires cascading out. Yeah.
Gaping maw with all these. And most of the wires we didn't need. We just needed a few of the wires, to get to the speakers in the back or whatever. Anyway, we're driving down the avenue and we do come across this is our fantasy, that some attractive women, our age would want to ride. That's what happened. That's what we observed as kids. So we do wind up getting these two teenage girls, again, our age,
Oh,
in the
wow.
car. And we're driving and we have music on. We're
them in the
vibing. We got them in the Golf.
Hooray, chloroform.
Well, no. They willingly approached and got in the car.
Okay. You say so.
But as we're driving, one of them's like, hey, you know what? Put on, and they call for a different radio station.
Oh, no.
And they lean forward to change it themselves. Now, first of all, it's
boy.
like, wow, this girl, she smells fantastic. It's like, leaning between us, changing the radio.
Oh my
And then she realizes just a giant hole there with wires hanging out. And it's as if we're doing black magic to make music come out. She's now suddenly terrified of the vehicle she got into. How are you doing this? Where is this music coming from?
Oh my gosh.
And she sees the giant contraption between my legs with all these wires, They're
Brag
arcing and
much?
sparking. They asked to get out immediately.
Oh, really?
So they were in the car all of, I don't know, hearing one song that they asked us to change.
Wow.
Radio was important in the 1980s.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Definitely. For many
So
purposes.
I have never told you this story, but I'm about to.
Yes.
It's my car radio story.
Yeah.
Growing up as a child, you watch your parents operate things. How do you drive? All right, you hold the wheel and you do this. How do you cook? You take a pan and a skillet, a spatula. And so you watch your parents use the radio. Now, keep in mind, this is back when the radio was not a flat face thing. You had these two posts, and one of them you would turn, and that would be tuning the radio. And the other one had a knob you turn, that was the volume, right? And so I would always witness my parents, tuning the radio, and they would reach up to the dial and they would turn it. And they're like, don't touch the radio, don't touch the radio. And then finally one day, and I'm, an innocent young lad of 8 or 9 maybe, and they're like, do you want to pick a radio station? I'm like, hell yeah, I want to pick a radio station. Fantastic. But I never got a manual for the car radio. I only learned by observing. And so what it appeared people were doing, what they were doing was they would turn the knob, they would release their grip, turn their hand back, grasp the knob, and turn it again.
Oh, right.
But to my mind, they were just wiggling it back and forth. And so when I went to find the radio station, I just go squeak, squonk, squeak, squonk, squeak, squonk, squeak, squonk, squeak, squonk, just back and forth, because I didn't know you let go of it before turning your wrist again. And they're like, what are you doing? And it was a further several months before I was allowed to try to tune the radio again. They're like, what are you doing to it?
It's maddening.
Oh, I love
That's
it.
so funny.
But yes, a very important part. But it was an opportunity that I had not have been afforded, and it was awesome even to get a chance to pick the radio station because it was almost this sacrosanct thing that only mom and dad did. Yeah,
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
I love that.
I've said this before. Thank goodness our parents had good taste in music.
Yes, indeed. Radio was important enough to me that my sister and I wanted to pretend to be DJs, and we would record ourselves on one of those, the tape recorders with the handle, and the buttons
Oh,
just right
yeah.
inside the
Yeah.
handle. And we found one of those in my grandparents' house, and that was it. And we loved to pretend to be DJs from the Z100 radio station, Scott Shannon and Jack DeWack.
she still remembers the names.
Yeah,
Wow.
Yes.
Jack Black, yeah.
Ross Britton, that was another one. And we made up our own little characters to go along with this. And
Cat the Rat.
There was a rat in a rat too. I think that was my cousins. We had a Skeeter.
Check of all the characters.
Oh, I don't know who Skeeter. My sister. Well, my
It's
sister
like
was-
Pee Wee's Playhouse on the radio. The cat was running there.
It was. And we spent hours and hours just pretending to have our own radio station. But we also called it Z100. So
That's
we weren't very
adorable.
original.
All right, Kat, you're going to have to give me a clip of that. We're going to listen to that on the next episode.
Oh, here we go.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, I bet I can
Got to
dig it
hear a
up.
young little cat.
Okay. All right.
Here
Hold
we
to
Dig
it.
it up.
Is that all you got?
Yep.
All right. But meanwhile, let's listen to an actual DJ who was actually, again, changing radio in our lives as a result. And no, seriously, I'd say that with not exaggerating. I really do believe this. No hyperbole. In a moment, we'll be right back with our guest today, Larry the Duck Dunn.
Where?
All right, guys, that's good
Yay.
enough.
Quack.
Thank you so much. All right,
Better
so
one
now
last
it's 42
quack.
minutes, so I'm going to stop recording here.
Oh, bye, everybody.
Oh,
Yeah, folks on Facebook, thanks so much.
Bye again.
Miss So's still here.
Oh,
Brad's still here.
grocery
There's
parking
still
lots
like
for
8 or
the
9 people
best.
here. Yeah. They didn't want to leave.
Yeah. Oh wow, Miss So
Oh,
did
yeah.
it too, I guess. Miss So remembers the
did.
batteries. Mm-hmm.
D cell, single D cell batteries.
Too late.
The double D cells? Or the single D?
Microphone.
Hey,
Mr.
good looking.
Microphone
We'd have to pick you up
Fantasy
later.
Commercial. Oh yeah, that's what he's talking about.
Thanks,
Yes, you're
Karen.
right, Brad. You're right. I reach down between my legs, ease the
Oh.
seat back.
That's exactly what popped into my head when you said you had a radio between your legs.
David Lee Roth.
Then,
She
yeah,
got
you had
one look at this impressive beast between my legs. Whoa!
What are you doing?
You
I don't even-
said,
That you said it.
and I heard
None of that occurred to
and
me at
John
the time.
went, brag much?
Oh, was
You'll
your-
hear it during the edit.
You'll hear it later.
You'll hear it in the edit and have a great
I
time.
gotta say, why does this always? I'm not recording anymore, by the way. Guys.
Oh, I still
Any of this
am.
gold is gone.
Well, we're still live.
Well, that's recording that. You're right.
There we
That's
go.
recording it. Then. I'll start recording it. I've got to say, because I've said this before, I don't know how it seems like some of our, I don't say raunchier because it's, more salacious material winds up being when we're on episodes where we're setting up a guest.
Setting up a guest.
And I know that their
Every
publicist, in
time.
the very least, is going to listen to it.
Every time.
As they do to make sure, like, what did I get them into? Is it good? Can we promote this?
You just got to set us up. You're like, okay, this recording PG-13. This recording hard G. This, you let us know. What are you
We
shooting for?
are.
I feel like it's like moth to a flame. It would still happen.
Yeah, it's
It's like how you're not supposed to laugh in church, so everything's hilarious.
church laughter. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me tell you, I'm going to share with you my secret weapon for how to have a hilarious church session.
That's
What you do.
What's a
specific?
church session first? What does that mean?
Well, it could be Sunday morning.
When
it
you're
could be
attending
Wednesday
a church
evening, whenever
service.
you go to church and someone's
Okay.
right. So what I always did. So imagine a pastor up there, and he's like, "Oh, the fire and the brimstone and right, all this." Imagine
Yeah.
that he has a really long yo-yo on each hand. So when he goes, and anyway, and I'm like, wow,
walking
that's
the dog.
amazing. And anyway, right, and he's flailing his hands, and I just imagine just spinning these yo-yos around, and they're the Duncan ones with the light in them. I'm imagining,
Yeah.
right,
Oh, yeah.
spinning around
Butterfly.
to the point where, in my Bible that I had when I went to church, there were several lithographs, like pivotal moments in the Bible, and it's like the Sermon on the Mount. And I drew the yo-yos on Jesus's hands because everything in church to me is if somebody's talking, they have a yo-yo, one in each hand, and they're doing tricks.
That's
and I would
wonderful.
just, and the more someone would
Yo-yos.
gesture, the more I would laugh and couldn't keep it in, and it just got funnier and funnier. So use that the next time someone's preaching or standing at a podium, yo-yo in each hand. It's hilarious. And they'll do this and one more thing, like that's a good trick because whatever. Yeah, it's great.
He's walking the dog.
There you go.
I want to see that artwork, John. That's a great idea of you just adding yo-yos to religious artwork.
Oh, can you dig that
Bible
up?
is probably still at my mom's house. Maybe I could find it and get some shots.
Oh my gosh.
Right
that'd
on.
be amazing.
Please do.
You won't have to look far. Just flip till you find the first picture. Yo-yos.
Is he on the
Guaranteed.
cross? Is he on the cross?
Oh no!
Is he doing around the world?
I hope not.
Walking the dog. He's like, what did little Johnny do?
That's not much of a move around. That's not much of a trick. They're just yo-yos hanging there.
No.
No.
All right. John's going to eat.
All right, everybody.
All right,
I
guys,
will
thanks
stop
for joining
recording
us.
as well. So I finally did. Thanks
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye bye.
Did I stop too soon?